movement prescribed. Brought to you by prescript.com. A personalized approach to keeping you healthy and making your best even better. Your hosts, Dr. Jordan Shallow and Dr. Jordan Jiunta.
Welcome back. Another episode of RX'D Radio. I realized it's been like 200 episodes that I've not once said that I am the host of. I know that the intros are a little bit sporadic. Sometimes it's just me. Sometimes it's me and Jiunta. Sometimes we get right into it. Sometimes we have an intro. Sometimes we don't. Today is one of the times where we do. So welcome to the show. First time listener, this is RX'D Radio. I am one of your hosts, Jordan Shallow. Joining me in this episode today, the miraculous tent lifter, post-apocalyptic California, my good friend, Dr. Jordan Jiunta. Today's episode, we go through progressions, how to suck less life and lifting. Something we meant to get into last week when we went like full tinfoil hat on the QAnon stuff. A lot of fun. And do remember, when we speak outside of the realm of lifting, you need to realize that we have no idea what the hell we're talking about. But as far as lifting stuff goes, we've been around, we've done some stuff, we studied some stuff, we lifted some stuff. So that is our domain of expertise. So we do appreciate the history lessons in the DM. We will retain likely none of it, but we appreciate you guys listening, appreciate you guys sharing. This episode, like I said, brought on actually about, as we were discussing one of our courses upcoming. So for those who've been listening to us for a while, we actually have our barbell coaching certification course through Prescript, which is an interesting new course model that we've just tested out the first semester. It's a 7-week course in its entirety. So the first week, you actually get access to the first week's extracurricular content, which is video tutorial instructions, which goes through the introduction of the squat. And we start to go through progressions, variations, adaptations, and optimizations. Followed after that first week by your lecture, or by your first lecture with yours truly, and our director of strength sports, Stuart Locke. In our first lecture, we go through sort of creating movement heuristics, or heuristics around the movement of squatting, and then onward we move into programming from there. So, and we follow that model as we get into the bench press as well as the deadlift. And every week you get dripped new content after the lecture, new tutorial videos, coaching cues based off of this idea of progressions, regressions, adaptations, and optimizations of the big three lift. It is far and above the most comprehensive course on barbell lifting, period. Been a competitive powerlifter for some time, been a strength and conditioning coach for even longer, personal trainer even longer than that. Stu has an incredible amount of experience as both an athlete on the field and on the platform, as well as a strength coach and personal trainer. So this course kind of goes through the deepest dive and tries to bring it all to an applicable level so you can go in the next day and change your own lifting and also change the lifting of your clients and athletes. So Prescript Online Barbell course is currently up for sale. If you want to head over to www.pre-script.com, registration will be closing. And if I'm not mistaken, Renee might kill me if I get this wrong, but registration is closing this Saturday. Let me pull up the calendar right quick so I can get a date for you guys. And that would be the 26th. So registration closes the 26th of September with the course content dripping out on the Thursday, the 1st. That's when you'll get your first daily dose of curriculum. Again, that first week is going to be coming in hot with the squats, talking about setup, stabilization, execution, moving onward rather after that, the week following into progressions, regressions, adaptations, and optimizations, with the lectures going as follows. You're creating movement heuristics week 1 with some insight on common mistakes and how to fix them. Week 2, we go into sort of the theoretical side of programming, which the feedback on that particular aspect has been one of the strongest. Something that the students have gone through the course so far have said that that component of it lent a lot of clarity to not only their own programming, but also the programming of athletes. We really try and break down right tool for the right job at the right time, for the right person, So we take a strong look at what qualifies a novice versus an intermediate versus elite. How do we assess for movement prerequisites of both? How do we look at volume landmarks at each different skill level? And how can we go from that adaptation phase into optimization as we work out into elite? So guys, that's it for me. Enough rambling. This one today is with Dr. Jordan Jiunta and myself, Jordan Shallow. Just a huge thank you to everyone who's signed up for the course already. Been overwhelming support. I do recognize a lot of names for all you guys out sharing the podcast. We're knocking on the door of 1 million downloads, which is pretty crazy to me. So, hats off to you guys for putting up with our nonsense. Hopefully you guys learn something. We have a ton of fun. And hopefully if you guys are interested and in on more of the athletic space, powerlifter, coach, general hobbyist, enthusiast, if you want to get more out of your lifting, more out of your career, more out of your coaching, I highly recommend getting on this course. Again, registration is closing this coming Saturday, the 26th of September. So hopefully see you guys in class at the beginning of October, guys. Thank you so much for everything. I'm going to sign off for now. Hope you guys enjoy the episode.
Have you ever heard of the theory of weakest link versus strongest link sports?
Right. I think we talked about this a bit before.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting, right? Like being better. My friends, when we were kids, we used to say it all the time. Like, in order to win, you need to stop losing, right? Like, it's a pretty simple concept when you think about it. But there's a lot that as you get older, and there's a bit to that. And I think like this idea of, being a like strongest man versus weakest man. Like our worst days are way better than they used to be, and that's kind of a win, where it's like you string together more of those, and it's like, I don't know, that's what I like about podcasts as a whole, right? Like the minimum viable product when it comes to listenability of like the medium. Like a YouTube channel is a fucking nightmare. Like people come to me like, oh, like, Instagram, I know like a little bit about a little bit. Podcasting, like I got a half decent grasp on it by now, other than like whether or not Jordan's fucking mic is plugged in. But like YouTube is such a pain in the ass, right? Like, it's fucking the edits and the thumbnails and all this and the 4K, and it's got to be jump cuts, like you're watching the fucking Kardashians on speedballs, and it's just like, fuck that, man. Like, I just want to plug in headphones, or don't plug in headphones, and just like talk on the internet. But yeah, so like I think it's definitely like, where a YouTube channel might be your strongest link, right? Like a strongest link medium, where it's like, you hit, like, you go viral on YouTube. That's massive. There's no like virulence to podcasting, right? Like it's such a slow, it's a knife versus a gun, right? Like it's just one cuts deep and it'll kill you slow, and the other's like pretty instantaneous. Like I feel like YouTube is very much like that gun, where it has the greatest amount of leverage over other platforms. Like, you could see a clip of something in a story on Instagram, drive to YouTube. You could see a clip of something or the full length thing on Facebook, drive to YouTube. Where Instagram and Facebook don't necessarily will ever get that reciprocation, right? That trickle down effect from those other two platforms. So I really think that podcasting is in a lot of ways like your weakest link, right? Like it's only as like podcasting is like soccer, and what YouTube would be like basketball. You put Bron on a team, right? He's going hard. Like he'll fucking put a ring on your finger, right? Where it's just like, if you think of soccer, like Ronaldo could lose a championship, right? Like you could use too many other players in the fucking field for one guy to be able to carry. That field's too big. There's a lot of reasons that soccer is a weakest man. Bad defender, you're fucked, right? Like you got fucking Ralph Wiggum in the backfield picking his nose and picking fucking daisies. Like, oh, big, just kick it that way and it's gonna work, right? So like podcasting a lot of ways like that. Like as long as your like worst episode is getting better, as long as that worst player is getting better, your podcast is getting better, right? Like, I don't know, what would you say our best episode is? Like if you had to go back.
Best. Oh man, I get tagged in some of the ones that we put up about like specific injuries and stuff. I think they resonate with people at like specific points when they're having those injuries or experiencing those.
What about your favorite? Because like maybe we break it down, like, because we can kind of break into two categories, right? Like we can break them down interview style like best
Right.
interview that we had or favorite interview, and then you can go like personal favorite, me and you just kicking it around.
Yeah. Interview. Fuck, man. That's a hard one. Best interview that we did.
Or the one that people bring up the most. That might narrow it down for you.
Right. Maybe Steffi Cohen, because she's a huge name in the space. Someone
Right.
like that. People that people look up to, they like to listen to them talk. Wow.
Right.
So profound. So maybe something like that. Or who was a really good one?
Which one
Let's
stuck
see.
with you the most?
I really like the one you and Killian did with Blaine McConnell. That dude's just like a fucking weapon all the way around. So that's kind of like me, like being fanboy on him. I thought that was super cool. I really enjoyed talking with John North, just because he's like, you know, for good reasons or bad, he's a legend in the sport of weightlifting.
Unhinged.
Yeah.
Unhinged is the word that came to mind.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed actually doing that. It's been a cool journey though, dude. We've gotten to talk to a lot of cool people.
It's unbelievable how much money we've saved in like consulting on an hourly basis with really smart people. It's just crazy. Ones that come to mind, the Cashew one caught me off guard, and that one sticks with me.
That was a deep one.
Like I'm sitting there with you in that office, like just like low key, just sobbing in the corner. I was like, "Fuck!" And that's the one I think. That's the one I think that people come to me, and it's disproportionate. Like I can go back and check the downloads, and it's by no means our most downloaded because it was so early, right? Like every week we're getting more and more, and you guys share it out to your friends and Instagram and all that stuff, which we appreciate. But the Cashew one, if you have it, Mike Cashew, it's inside 50. It had to be within our first 50 episodes.
Oh yeah, man.
And that one is like, that was something like we would go back and forth. Like I think we had similar episodes in the time. We had Rob Hall was our first interview. We had Jailhouse Strong Josh Bryant, and those were two guys that I pulled in from the powerlifting world, and like, yo, I got one, it'd be really interesting. And I was like, okay, like I've heard of Brute, like, okay, cool, he's got this, I checked it out. I was like, all right, right on. And just the conversation, like 5 minutes before, I'm like, yo, give me something, like, what are we looking at here? And I was listening to a podcast on the way to your place, and it just got heavy, like heavier than any barbell heavy. And so that one for me is like always one that kind of reaches people in a way where it's cool to like, Blaine's a fucking animal, and you talk a little bit about his training and elasticity days and Olympic weightlifting days and periodization. Like, yeah, it's cool. But like the people who like really got like that was a profound episode for them, was like, that kind of topic, that kind of subject matter. Like I tell people about it all the time. It's like, we talked to this guy that his friend died, and on the day of his funeral after he overdosed was the day he shot up for the first time. And I was like, that's crazy. Like that's an impact like better than periodization, because it reaches someone that needs to hear it, which is pretty cool. So yeah, like, and then we think just quality wise, like I think most of our stuff is pretty good. Like that's why we do it.
Content wise, yeah.
Yeah. There's been a couple episodes we haven't released, which is like probably I would say the worst ones are the ones you guys will never hear.
Absolutely.
And he remembers which ones there are. Okay.
Thigh babe.
Oh yeah, that was a rough one. But I was able to go on Mind Pump and really kind of go ham, and that was like a benefit for them. So I was able to channel that aggression and also not ruin your credibility. So
oh, that's fucking great.
Yeah, we got 4 minutes into recording that 3 separate times, and you're like, dude, I can't go down this road with you. I can't. And I was like, true. That's a fair point. We're gonna pack it up for the day. I'm gonna go sleep it off. And then I went to Mind Pump and just totally unloaded.
That's fucking great. The really cool one was Alex Viada. That was like, I think it marked a cool point, like almost a turning point in RX Radio, where like, we started to switch gears from like me and you talking shit in my office to like starting to reach out to people. Like we were down like San Diego, sleeping like a meth RV for like a weekend. But I think that kind of put us down to like a cool direction, and that was just like super cool. We were just like, I feel like we just broed out so hard on the fact of like, yeah, weightlifting is so fucking cool, and like went like kind of deep into that rabbit hole on that one.
Yeah, and too, like with Viata, it was like, I still remember like the major quote from that episode was "No one cares," right? Like
Oh,
here you
dude,
have a guy,
all the time.
right? It's just like if you haven't listened to the Alex Viata episode, like definitely worth going back and listening to that one. Like, and a lot of people, because we weren't at the point where we could really document it, right? Like I remember getting flexed on by like this giant cat at the end of the driveway, and like we were staying literally in an RV, was the Airbnb in the driveway of like a trap house, like, and I slept I slept in the fucking crow's nest with like a butcher's knife under my pillow, and
Yeah.
it's just a fucking nightmare. But yeah, because that was that whole road trip too. Was we did Alex Viata down in San Diego. We did Barbell Shrugged in Encinitas.
Mhm.
We did Wellness Forest down in Carlsbad. We had like one Juggernaut, Chad
Drug.
Wesley Smith, in fucking Newport Beach. We did 7 in like 3 days,
Yeah.
like
Contreras
that.
was on there too.
Oh yeah, dude, that was weird. I still have yet to release the barbell hip thrusting video. And it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Well, let me check. Hold on. I want to check something while we're here. It's like, I don't know. We don't really check our stats too often because we don't have advertisers. We don't have an agenda. We're just like, yeah, let's riff. And you guys like, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but like they listen. To say they like it is maybe a little bit too. Maybe that's a reach. But let me see.
They
Where are we
keep
at?
coming back for more.
They keep coming. So we're at 750,000 downloads.
What? That's
Yeah,
fucking wild.
we've just passed 775,000 unique downloads, which is huge.
That's
So
wild.
yeah, thank you guys for that. Maybe we'll celebrate 1,000,000 when we get there. That'll be a really fucking weird moment because 1,000,000 people do not need to hear our voice. So I do thank you and simultaneously apologize.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think this is like a segue into the point where we meant to talk about before we went off the rails on politics and voting and things like that. Sidebar, and this episode will come out next week. The Rogan might be the moderator for the Biden-Trump debate. Have you heard this?
No, I have not.
Welcome to 2020, homie. Where there's no rules.
Is it going to be in a
points
fucking
don't matter.
octagon with some chain link around it?
All right, who do you got? Biden, Trump, toe to toe.
Oh, it's a weird fucking fight, dude. I feel like Trump's the guy that like shirt cocks in the locker room. So that with that comes a certain amount of confidence that I think he'd put Biden to sleep.
Really? I see. Biden's dealing with some dementia shit though. Like I feel like Biden's just gonna go. He's just gonna go dirty. Like I feel like Biden would gouge an eyeball or something. Like Grandpa, you can't do that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's hard to tell though because I'm not sure if he's like awake most of the time, anyways. So that's going to be the weirdest title fight ever. And the title is President of the United States of America.
The title is World Order. Yeah. Dude, that would reject. Imagine World Star Hip Hop on that one. That would like Trump just World Star. That would be the most epic shit. Which is weird because the point of this episode is progression, and that is an indicator of some massive regression. We ain't gonna make it. Yeah. So I mean, that's a little bit about nothing, but perhaps as good a segue as we've ever had. But yeah, we were talking a little bit last week actually before we went fucking full tinfoil hat. We were talking about like progression. Yeah. We wanted to rather talk about progression, in exercise selection, exercise order, in training style, intensity, and volume, and just all things that comes to progression. Because like people struggle with the idea of getting stronger, of getting bigger. Like it turns into this very nebulous like chicken and the egg conversation. Like how can I lift something before if I've never lifted it? And it's like, exactly. And you're like, what? Red pill, blue pill. And it's just like, those aren't drugs. Don't take both. And it's just so progression becomes like this very, it's for those who struggle with it, they talk about it a lot. And in the talking about it, they continue to struggle because they're not actually applying anything. So when it comes to writing a program and worrying about progression, where do you start? What are your metrics? What are the things we look to progress in or towards, if that makes sense?
I think it even starts with a more broad scope than that and looking at the athlete that you're trying to progress. It's, I work with the whole fucking range. Like I had an international weightlifter on my table last week, and I was teaching someone how to snatch this morning. So I work with the whole fucking spectrum of people. So the first thing is for me is determining who is this athlete and what is their most apparent need in this progression. So for a lot of people in the sport of weightlifting, it comes from a positional standpoint. So that's an overgeneralization. There's definitely people that need to build up strength so they can lift more weight before they, can actually have any sort of meaningful numbers. But I think the majority of people getting into weightlifting is positional strength. So being able to get into and maintain positions. We work with a lot of the Good Life people, and I follow them on Instagram, and I see like there's this like Olympic weightlifting craze going through the Good Life gyms right now, and it's these fucking strong dudes, but they can't lift, I won't say any real meaningful weight just because they don't have the positions yet. So I think a lot of times in the population that I work with, for the most part, is getting them into positions and then being able to sustain those positions against any sort of load that's going to matter in the sport.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the transferable thought process there is like, to extrapolate out from Olympic weightlifting, what you did there was you began to stratify and begin to create a hierarchy around first and second order and third order adaptations that need to be made towards optimization, right? But we've talked about this time and again, that at polar ends of this spectrum is, adaptation to optimization. And a lot of people might look to the optimization in stages where someone might be in a very a very high demand to adapting to these positions and building strength and awareness in these positions rather than trying to optimize. And a lot of times you might see that this is where we see the greatest regression in exercise selection, in training volume, and in training intensity, because we've identified that what is hindering our, or maybe uninitiated or their uninitiated kind of viewpoint on their progress is not the amount of weight in their hands, it's where they're going with that weight, right? So I think step one in drawing a roadmap for progress is to begin to stratify begin to identify first where you are on that spectrum. What is the end goal where we are optimizing whatever the task is, right? Is the end goal optimizing performance for a field sport or like a NFL, Major League Baseball, track and field? Like, what does the end of that spectrum look like when we can get to optimization? And then starting to peel back the layers of movement through specific assessments with that end goal in mind. And we start to really break down or hit a threshold of once we hit the middle of that teeter-totter of ability as we regress patterns and see where we're starting to show positional competency in this case, or positional strength, or positional stability, or metabolic conditioning, right? We talk about your CrossFit programming sometimes, and you have a good Olympic weightlifting background, but you might look to build a stronger strength-focused base further out, right? Because you're looking to make serious adaptations in strength and then worry about optimizing your performance going into the competition. So, first off, identifying that spectrum and isolating where the person is on that spectrum between adaptation and optimization, and really starting to put in, choices in exercise selection, regression, in intensity and volume, training frequency, and all these little variables to see, all right, where is the mark in which this person is ideally challenged enough that they can recover from, but not beating them into the ground in a way where we're not actually, driving towards optimization. We're actually furthering our ability and pushing more towards this regressed adaptation, right? And this is where I think assessments fall so short, right? And I'm going to ask you kind of your take on, or how you start with assessments of these lifters. We've actually gone back and forth on some of the patients you've worked with. HIPAA, not going to name names, they're legit as fuck, right? They're national level contenders, they're Olympic level contenders in the sport of Olympic weightlifting. And I think the unique thing that you do well is establishing a baseline assessment that's time efficient based off of the skill of the lifter, which is essentially saying you're good at looking at someone, looking at their training history, watching them move and going, okay, from optimization to adaptation, given your particular issue, given your particular goal, you are here. I'm going to assess you here, and I'm going to be a standard deviation either towards optimization or towards adaptation, or right on the nose with that assessment and my intervention as a consequence of that. So like, let's take, for example, the Olympic weightlifter you're working with, who shall remain nameless, even though he is quite prominent. How is it that assessment differs for someone like that? Fucking, unbelievable lifter, to the person this morning that you were, you're teaching how to snatch for the first time.
Right. Generally, the higher the level the lifter, 1,000 times more granular assessment. You want to hit the nail right on the fucking head, where, with a brand new lifter, you could, just point to something and they probably have an issue with that they can improve on. So the big thing is really getting a good idea at the whole picture when you're looking with someone that's more advanced. And when I say more advanced, it could be anyone that's basically that would be considered proficient within that activity or above. Because someone that's going to be proficient, they're going to have base level competencies in, the positions that they need to be in that sport, the base level strength, the systems part of it, the conditioning pertinent to that sport. So they're going to in this case, they're going to look like a weightlifter. They're going to train like a weightlifter. So it's not going to be necessarily a training consideration, where it might be, pieces of the training you could be looking at, but you need to look at, okay, this person fits the mold, but what part of what they're doing or how they're moving is causing that to be dysfunction or causing a lack of function within this mold for this type athlete. So, it's going to be different from case to case, but making sure that you have a good grasp of we'll start off pretty basic with range of motion demands of the sport, making sure that there's no gross lack of range of motion either from side to side or outside of the norm of maybe what that sport is going to demand. Because what's going to happen then is it's going to, cause force transfer up or down the chain to a place that may not necessarily be intended to bear force. And then outside of that, you need to look at the kind of global and then specific function in terms of, okay, can they perform this movement? Okay, they can perform this movement, but they're doing it in a compensatory way because they might not have the amount of stability through this hip that they need. So they're favoring this side, and then there's kind of a cascade of issues that comes from that. So kind of looking at, range of motion joint by joint, looking at how they're moving in a more global sense and seeing if there's any sort of pattern that you could pick up on that's causing any sort of either lack of performance or dysfunction. And to be honest, weightlifting is kind of easy, weightlifting, powerlifting, because it's symmetrical, right? Basically, the pursuit of maximal force output a lot of times is going to be the pursuit of symmetry. When you get into things outside of that, like field sports or other things that, are, actual athletes, there's going to be so many more variables that aren't as isolated. So someone like this, it's relatively easy. Okay, there's a lack of, internal rotation of this hip. It looks like, you're compensating this way because you're not able to properly stabilize this hip through this portion of the lift. So that can make it a little bit easier. But I think just making sure that your assessment matches the gauge of that athlete. If you're talking top tier athlete, you need to have top tier assessment, because if any little thing falls through the cracks, then that's going to be, kilos left on the table, or, points left on the table. If you're talking with, say basketball player, whatever it is, football player. And then at the other end of that, with a more kind of entry level athlete, it's going to be, Killian Hamilton would love this. It's going to be skill acquisition is going to be the main thing. You need to first get them to take on the proportions of an athlete that should be training in this way. So, sticking with weightlifting as an example, they need to have this, baseline amount of strength, and their clean should be within this proportion of their front squat, and their snatch should be kind of this proportion of their back squat or whatever. General strength proportions you want. Outside of that, you're going to be doing a ton of skill work and a ton of positional strength work. So that process almost starts the same place with everyone. So that makes it a little bit easier with lower level or entry level athletes.
Yeah, and I think the jaw, and this is where we start to see like fields of thought, invert themselves and try and balance on a point. It's like there is a large market for coaches and trainers, but there is a finite market for professional athletes, right? I know this because I've trained everyone from a death. I've had clients that have died, and not like car accident shit, like natural causes. And it was their
Is
time
it bad
to
that
go.
I'm laughing?
No, but it's just like the spectrum, right? Like, I've been there. Like, I unless now it's to the point where 99% of my clients are professional athletes. But like, don't think I haven't done the 5 a.m.s with like the old dude that wakes up at 4 to listen to AM radio, cross country, shout out cross country AM radio in Canada. I think it's 1500 best conspiracy theories going. Been in the game for a minute. This was if they did a podcast, they would crush right now. But like I've been there, done that, and I think what coaches are trying to do to a certain degree, and I understand why they have to do it, but they skip the cue, right? So if I were to draw out this spectrum, right? Let's do this in your mind. If you're listening, you have a pen and a pad, draw it out, shout us out, tag Instagram, all that stuff. And on one end, I would put optimization, and on the far end, I would put adaptation, and I would put a bunch of different lines that would indicate progressions. Volume, intensity, exercise progressions, training volume, frequency, whatever. And as I prioritized them more towards the side of beginner lifter, adaptations, and I started to gradate them. I started to measure the points between them. The points between them would go for very broad in progression, like progressive over like neural adaptations, and creating like efficiency and synchronicity in the nervous system when you first start training allows you to make these relative quantum leaps. Like you go from one part of the spectrum to the next. Like let's say we have a spectrum that's like 8 inches long, right? If I'm just dividing up between my hands here, and the far left is adaptation, I can start to make pretty serious moves towards optimization on the far right with very minimal work, right? But as we go more towards the optimal, right, the farthest right of this spectrum, the gradations, the space between these wavelengths and these training adaptations or these training progressions or optimization starts to get smaller. The space in between them, but they are magnified by the ability of the lifter. 2.5% increase in a snatch or a clean is going to mean a lot more to someone who snatches, fucking 200 kilos. Right? That's going to be way more kilos on the bar. But what coaches do, they want to work with this population. They try and learn as many of these advanced, intricate, like really hardwired, especially with weightlifting and powerlifting, because there's more of a linear progression and it's a more insular pursuit when we think about controlling variables. Field sport athletes, it doesn't work like that. But when we look at that, we can think of all these maybe from an optimization standpoint, we can, we wave load this and deal it. But it's like if they take that thought process that works in, like you said, these granular jumps as we really approach optimization with the best in the world, and we try and apply it down here, the Phyllis, the librarian who's going to die in the time you train her. It's like, what are you doing? Like this is like paying for something that's $3 with a bunch of pennies. And you have a fucking you have a $2 bill or a $2 bill. Fuck, the year was 1974. You have like 3 $1 bills. It's like, yo, make the purchase for the most efficient thing possible, rather than coming in with all this intricate stuff and trying to throw 300 pennies down to make $1. Right. So that's like, or I think coaches trip up, but it's like, guess what? Like if you have proof of concept on Phyllis the librarian who's going to die on your watch at some point in the next 5 years, and you can get her to, live a better life and all that. Well, guess what? Phyllis has a grandson, and Phyllis's grandson is 16, and he runs like a 4.140. Like he's a fucking. It's like, oh well, I'll pay for it because I'm gonna die soon. And next thing you know, you got a prospect because you could get Phyllis off the fucking toilet seat by not going too granular and understanding where Phyllis was on this continuum, right? Because I get why coaches do what they do. Right, they're attempting to differentiate themselves in a very what seems like homogenous marketplace, and that's fine. But the way you differentiate yourself is get fucking results. That's just a great differentiating criteria, because there is, I would say, 98% of people that are not getting results, right, in an expedited fashion that's worth anyone's money. Right, so it's just like get results, and then you'll get opportunities, right? You cannot force opportunities by trying to think, and you need to be a practitioner. You don't need to be an academic, right? And they're the opposite. As same as adaptation and optimization are opposite ends. Academics and practitioners are two different things because we practice, right? We do stuff, we get hands on, all that shit. So I think that level of conceptualization from a macro view helps people with like the certainty of their decision making process. Like the worst thing that you could do, and look, like questioning yourself is great. Having people around you that you can ask questions and will ask questions of you, super helpful. I have an arch nemesis now on Instagram that's in my DM every day. And he questions everything. It's fucking annoying as hell. And like I mic dropped him a few times. I like academically pimp slap people's elbow to like stunnered his ass a few times. And if he's listening, you know who you are. You know, so don't come at me with it. But like, it's productive, right? Like he really helps me shape a lot of the points that I make and make sure they're coherent. Like I can't have a post without this guy up in my grill about something on the post. And I'll like duke it out. Like, I don't give a fuck, man. You come at me, but it's good, like, because it makes it unimpeachable, right? Because you get to a certain point, we just been talking for so long that people just listen, and it's just like
so true.
If you heard the conversation that led into the start of every podcast, hey, bro, is your mic plugged in? Oh shit! Fuck, I haven't been plugged in for like 3 months. Just like
that's why Lundy has no respect for me.
Zero. Well, here's the thing, man. Lundy's been knowing me since like the 8th grade. So imagine how dumb I was back then. But no, so for my biggest thing with coaches is like, look, the first thing you need to identify is this spectrum of adaptation to optimization. Understand where your client is and turn over the big rocks first. Not to say there's not fucking pebbles that you can find gold under when you're working with someone who is like a super high level athlete, right? Like I'm in a consulting stage right now with a race car driver, with like a Formula One race car driver. And it's just like, okay, like this is that's a weird thing. One of the guys used to be the strength coach for the San Francisco 49ers, gave up the Niners gig, esports.
No. Strength and conditioning for esports?
Hand to fucking God, esports.
Fuck 2020, dude.
You were wearing a fucking mask inside today, teaching a snatch, and this guy's getting paid to teach virgins how to lift weights. just let that do what, like, let that sink.
I honestly don't know how to feel, but either way, like, he wins. Like, I'm losing this.
100%. Yeah, dude, like, he left the 49ers. Right? One of the most recognizable brands and largest institutions in the world. It's like Catholic Church, Bayern Munich, Dallas Cowboys, Niners, Coca-Cola, Barack Obama. That like rounds up. And he's dealing with like kids who make like, a couple $1 million on Twitch or whatever the fuck, right? And it's just like that's where you get it, right? But like if you know that scale from start to finish, you can start to really optimize anyone's performance, right? Regardless of what the objective outcome is. And so he can take what he took at the Niners, fucking line his pockets with a bunch of nerds' money, and he can make them better, right? Because he knows how, like, okay, what are the big rocks? And let's do that. Like, it is an incremental process of turning over the big rocks first, and then slowly understanding, like, someone's tripping over boulders and you're moving the pebbles out of the way. It's like, guys, blue light blockers, doesn't matter. Like, this guy works in a fucking factory. It's full of fluorescent lights. He's not going to put the blue lights on, end up like some narcoleptic goat in the weight room, like, or in the lunchroom. Like, just fucking, let's ease up on the blue blockers before we get this guy, getting him able to maybe rotate the other way when he's not putting the door on the minivan, like turning left to right 1,000 times, right? But everyone just wants to feel smart. I really think that's what it is. And I want to tell people how dumb we are. I want to tell people that, look, for the last 15 episodes, Jiunta hasn't had his mic plugged in. It doesn't give a fuck, and it doesn't matter about, like, because here's the thing. Homeboy could come down and get treated, right? Who's the Olympic weightlifter, who will go to the Olympic Games, right? Like, people will, all my guys could listen to me on this podcast and be like, oh, yeah, no, totally. Like, I totally understand that Jordan's an idiot. But at the same time, like, he knows what rocks to turn over and when, and I'll stay injury free. I'll make another fucking. I had one of my guys the other day tell me that in passing, just a statement. And I'm not going to name names, but he's like, oh yeah, like I found out I was going to make an extra 90 grand this year. And I was like, oh, hold on. I'm going to go fuck myself real quick. It's just like, I just tripped over another 90 G's. Like he tripped over a white collar salary. Just like we woke up, his like agent was like, yeah, like, hey, you're going to make another 90 grand this year. Oh, okay. I'm gonna go football now. It's just like fucking incredible. But it's so like, we're not like, I think, and I want to put this in, like I really want to drive this home. It is not because we're smart. It has nothing to do with that. We're just have our eyes open to the big rocks, right? And it's like, yeah, like we've done this before where we can push the big shit out of the way really quickly, right? And we can leverage because I think the best thing you can do is index your assessments based off of your past knowledge, right? Like, and I say this in the level 1 course all the time, is like, if I were to look up in a phone book, right? Like if I was to try and find Jiunta in a phone book, like I guarantee you they're still dropping off phone books in Dallas, PA. Shout out Dallas, Pennsylvania. So if I were to move in at the bottom of your dad's hill on the other side of his moat and get a phone book, I was like, yo, like I want to kick it with, Mr. Jiunta, and I want to go shoot guns with Papa J. I wouldn't go to the phone book and open it right down the middle. Right? It's like J is going to be a little bit before A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, J, right? So what are we like? 7, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. So we're 10 letters in to a 26 letter alphabet. If I go right down the middle, I'm likely going to be too far ahead. I'm going to be close to the middle, but I'm going to pull it back a little bit, right? This phone book is the spectrum and how we intervene and assess, right? So like when homeboy comes in, you're not going to go, all right, we're going to hit a bird dog here. Oh, okay, you're pretty good at anti-rotation. Good at anti-rotation? Are you serious? Like this is everyone starting at A, right? Everyone just starts at A and goes, Abbotsford, Azor, Bill. It's like, yo, like you, what? Just index, turn to the middle of the phone book, less a little bit to the middle to the left. You're going to likely find Jiunta. And then once you're there, then it's like, all right, we turned over the big rocks. Maybe there's some shit underneath. Like, oh, I'm at Jared. I was like, oh, okay, I'm probably like one more page over and I'll probably be at Jiunta. Rather than just going A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, J, J. It's just like, Jared, okay, too far, one more page, 2 cuts, and I'm in, right? Like where people just, and this is a problem with systems. I'm going to follow the system. It's like you're going to follow the system, and you know what people are telling you? Turn the page. This is page 1. Everyone starts at page 1. It's like, that is so unbelievably dumb. That is so, like, it's just not sophisticated, right? Like, we're dumb. That's unsophisticated, and there's a difference, right? So I think indexing, understanding, like, I love this word. Like, I'm taking a computer science course right now, and that's how they explained how, like, Boolean operators work, like how Google fucking does googly things, right? It's this idea of, like, having, like, collated indexes. It's like, yes, indexes, that's what we need to understand, to be able to look at a problem and go identify some key search terms, right? The second we see like national level, immediately this takes my phone book of movements and goes, I have 3 pages I need to sift through. So you have Olympic, like search terms of Olympic weightlifter, national level, Olympic level, shoulder, hip, whatever. And next thing you know, we're left with like, all right, here's going to be the assessment, likely where he's at. And 1, 2, 3 is going to be like, if we need mobility, it's going to be this. If we need, and it's done. Like, it's fucking amazing. So don't look for algorithms. Look to build, and I'm going to use Stu Locke's term. Stu's our coach that helps teach our barbell course. Coming up, if you haven't and want to sign up, barbell course is in its last week of registration. 6-week course, a lot of fun. I do enjoy. Shameless plug. But he built out a heuristic which allows you to index better. So when we look at intervening with barbell movements, we can go, okay, we have these search terms that allow us to take this encyclopedia of knowledge that we have, and allows us to file it down into 3 or 4 things it could be, and then 1 likely thing it should be, and then you're done. Like, it's so easy. Trust me, that's why we do it. Rant over.
Yeah, I like it a lot, and that's exactly what it is, because you'll get a lot of these coaches coming up that find like the newest, like, I don't know, flashy, or like this these methods that are like, what is it called? It's like they throw people off because no one actually knows what they're doing, and they like have this like system where it's like, it seems like they have the secret sauce, and this is the thing. And honestly, it's perpetuated by a lot of professional athletes, because who are the people looking for those quarter of a percentage things that, oh, if there's a chance it'll work, I'll drop this many thousands on it because I have the money, because I made an extra 90K this year. But it's a lot of people that are drawn towards those systems because they think it's the this next thing that's going to fix the problem that has probably been fixed 5 times already, but it's going to do it better. But the stuff that's tried and true and these methods that aren't super sexy but they work, that's what it's always going to revert back to. It's not, there's no quick fix to this. There's no I'm going to take this pill and it fixes it. It's no, you actually have to put in the work, and you need someone that's going to guide you and be able to index these things, or at least assess accurately what the deficits are. And then, the process might not be sexy, but it's putting in the work to correct the deficit. And that's your answer right there.
Yeah. And it's like, I have a laundry list of guys who work because my guys will tag me and shit and be like, hey, what do you think of this? And it's to the point where they just send me the little laughy emoji. Like when they see some of their other friends in the leagues, like train with another guy, and they used to be like, hey, like, can we do this? And I would just call them and like just take an hour. I have like this virtual whiteboard thing. If you guys take the level 1 course, and I'll explain to them like why that's unsophisticated, why that's the wrong tool for the wrong job. And like, here's the thing with like athletes in general, and you could attest to this, especially Olympic weightlifting, like they're freaks. Like your homie is going to fucking crush it. And it's like your ability to optimize it's your acuity in the way you look at the gradations towards the level of optimization that makes you a practitioner worth going to, or a strength coach worth going to. But that acuity is useless without them, right? Without like, they are them not because of you. They are them because of them and their parents and whatever. Like, because like, oh fuck, dude, I'm gonna find it. It drives me nuts, like when people take credit for their athletes. Like, these people are like, because here's the thing: we have nature versus nurture, right? And pro athletes are like, maybe over the age of 30, 40 is really pushing it. You see a 40-year-old pro athlete, not really happening, right? Like, so I would argue that for the most part, the older the athlete gets, the more important their training becomes, because you have to think about exposure in relative proportions of nature to nurture. If you have some 16, 17-year-old kid, he's all nature, right? Like he's all fucking nature. Like he's literally a God-given specimen, right? To make adaptations, to have the limb length or the height or the width or the strength for the task of the sport, right? But as someone gets to 40, now all of a sudden we have more exposure to nature, or to nurture rather than nature. So even understanding there's an inverse relation, like, oh, is it nature, is it nurture? It's like, well, it depends on when you're looking at them, right? Like I went to school with a kid named Terry Malden. And before Terry, I hope you're out. Like we were talking about him the other day with a couple of my buddies. Terry had my back 100%, but like he was a gangster. Like Terry was a gangster, but he was also a gangster on the fucking basketball court. And in like the 10th grade, he was getting looked at by NFL programs. 6'3", 220, 10th grade. All nature, no nurture, right? Like that's just, you can't teach that, right? But someone will come in and claim it. Someone will come in and be like, this was my nurture. It's like, motherfucker, that kid was 16, running like, benching 225 for like 18 reps, running like at 6'2", 220. Like that's all fucking nature, right? So as people start to lay claim over these athletes, it's like, look, dude, all you're doing is you're harboring the transition. You should be long-term harboring the transition from nature to nurture, because they'll spend more time exposed to nurture than they have been predisposed by nature, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, dude. What I'm thinking of as you're talking about that is the Michael Jordan documentary. I brought it up on the podcast before, but if to anyone who's seen it, you literally see that transition go on. Like he gets to the league his rookie year. He's like, fuck this. I'm going to play basketball so fucking hard. And he was scoring like dude, he was getting like all these scoring records, but he wasn't like winning rings. He wasn't winning championships and shit like this. And he was just like this God-giving gift of basketball. And over time, like he has, I don't know, he has 6 rings. He's been playing for what, like 12 years or something. But you see how much more methodical he gets. And it's more about the game of basketball as opposed to going hard and getting the ball in the hoop. So it's yeah, dude, that transition exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and you see this, like, and you see it with LeBron. Like, how much does LeBron spend on fucking like his physical side of things a year? Over $1 million, 1.2, right? But what does he get? What is he getting out a year, man? Like, what was his last Lakers salary? 6 years, it was something dumb. It was like 123 million for like a handful of years.
Jesus,
but you remember
dude.
the stat?
No, I don't remember it, but that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it's insane, man. So it's just like understanding, like, know your fucking role is really what it comes down to. Like knowing your role as a coach. Like, and here's the hard part too, is like a lot of people when they get into strength and conditioning or coaching, they get into it as a consumer first rather than a creator, right? Like we're both athletes,
Absolutely.
failed, miserable, fucking have never been, has been, never was. But it's like, yo, like the sun is set. I'm going to step aside and like, I'm going to be a coach and like, I'll teach other people like kind of how to coach a little bit, but I don't want to be the athlete. Like I'm not splitting uprights. I'm not throwing touchdowns. Like, I like when people do that. Like, I'm literally going to read you a comment and I'm not going to shout out the fucking guy who I'm reading it from because he's a douchebag. But five. So this is what a post with one of his athletes. His athlete. So who is this kid? I'm trying to see who this athlete is. So this is a basketball player. What team is he on? What the fuck? What team are you on? What team is he on? I have no idea what team he's on. Anyways, I don't want to make it too easy for people to like know who this guy is. But here we have a guy on his knees on like a Swiss ball doing kettlebell bottom under presses in an abduct, like a military press. So he's balancing on his knees and he's this kid's he's at least 6'6", probably 6'8", and he's balancing on his knee, like on his shins, while he does overhead presses with kettlebells. And this motherfucker, ready? I've built a lot of world champions, NBA All-Stars, and NFL Pro Bowlers using this as part of their foundation programming. I'll leave it at that. What kind of evidence is that? That is the lowest tier evidence. I've seen better science on fucking cereal boxes. What, like he says, leave it at that with a shh emoji. Like that's some sort of mic drop. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? The only thing you're doing for this kid right now, as he's on his knees doing these kettlebells, are like, he's not dropping his shoulders below 90. He's in an abducted position. These kettlebells at most are 4 kilos. The only thing this guy's doing is not playing basketball. This is the only benefit that this might have to this kid's career, is that here is 7 seconds that he's not playing basketball and reverting to the shape of the sport of basketball. This is the douchiest fucking comment I have ever seen in my entire life. Like, this is like if Onion had an Instagram that was trying to troll strength coaches, it's this. What a fucking joke. Like, you've done nothing to make this kid, and he is a kid, 6'8". Unless you're in the back with horses pulling ankles one way and fucking wrist the other and making him taller, you're not creating shit. You're taking his fucking money. I hate people like this. God, they're the worst. I'm just stoked that, like, I remember having my first patient, and I could not believe that someone came in to see me. As some of you might understand, why would anyone want to do that? But even like, you know, like you have the spectrum as well, right? Like you're just as stoked teaching someone the muscle snatch and they do the work, or teaching someone how to snatch with a broomstick, as you will be if homie goes like to the Olympics next year. Same thing. So at the end of the day, it's still the same shit. Unbelievable. Big rocks. Big rocks, turn them over. Progression, understand the spectrum from adaptation to optimization. Know your role and know where your clients and athletes are at. Know where your patients are at on that spectrum. No one gives a fuck if you're smart. Look, we're dumb. And we can sit here and talk like Olympics and this and that and this other thing. And it's just like, yeah, we're smart enough to know our role, right? We're smart enough to know where people are and where they want to go. And that's like 90% of the battle.
Absolutely. I have so many people that make fun of me because, like, outside of the realm of strength and conditioning, like, I don't know anything. How many times have you referenced a current event and I'm like, what's going on in the world? Whatever. That's because my fucking realm is like this. This is it. This is all I really give a shit about. So, like, let me do my thing here. When it comes to the other shit, someone else can take the wheel.
100%. I don't know if my taxes have been paid yet.
Yeah, hopefully someone took care of that.
It's September. Lundy, if you're hearing this, please email Renee or Clem to ask them if my taxes have been paid. If you're the IRS, kindly fuck off. But it's like, I have no idea. But it's, I don't know, man. 'Cause I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to a passion thing, right? How many times do we talk about shit? And it's like, do I want to make money or do I want to do cool shit with cool people? And it's like, I want to do cool shit with cool people. Right. And it's like, I don't want to fucking the fact that we've doing this for 200 episodes or whatever, and we're still not plugging our mics in and you guys still show up. Unbelievable.
I love you guys.
Right? Like we almost have 1 million downloads. That's insane. And it's like, and I think that if there was a message to take away, it's that. And if it's not lifting weights, that's cool too. Find the thing that it is, and you'll probably be way easier, or it'll probably be way easier for you to make these decisions that yield the results in the field that you want. Right? Like I have friends who excel in all sorts of different stuff that's not fitness. Right? Like I have friends that work in the fashion industry, that work in the entertainment industry, and we sit around. It's like we talk about core level concepts, and really what we're all talking about is just, man, I really like what I do every day. Right? Like I don't sit around and be like, I fucking hate my job. It's like, okay, I'm going to talk to someone else now. This is like, I don't resonate with that. Right? And it's like for people, and people might really like money. And it's like, money's cool. I haven't lived with it. I've fucking definitely lived without it. That is just kind of like when you've done both, it's like, well, I've been alive the entire time, so it doesn't really matter. But you see someone like, you know, pumping his own fucking tires up, like saying that he created this NFL NBA basketball kid, and like trying to like flex on everyone on Instagram, like, dude, you're a douchebag. Like you're a douchebag. Please kindly go away. But yeah, it's like don't be a douche. Like what you do it with people that also like what they do, and like life will be pretty good.
Yeah. Give a shit about what you do. That's it.
Dude, 4 years of grad school with you, I didn't hear a single professor say that.
Give a shit.
Anyone say, just give a shit. Yeah, just
no one gives a shit about being a chiropractor.
Right. But it's because, dude, how many people, and we saw this firsthand, man, like when you started kicking ass and taking names when it came to like CrossFit, right? When I got into like powerlifting and strength training, and I was just at like a local Gold's gym, not like I say got into it, like we weren't into it like the entire time as we got into school, but as people started to see the ancillary benefit of giving a shit about anything, how that affected like your practice in the clinic, how that affected, like we were dumb kids. We were known to be dumb kids. We did dumb things. We missed tests. We played pool. We didn't pay attention. Right. But when we were at the gym, it was like, okay, how can I get better at this? How can like I pull a little bit from that anatomy lab that I was in to get better at this? Right. Like how can I, and then all of a sudden it's like the two dumb kids that were barely passing the class had a full roster full of patients. And why? It's like, oh man. And then people, I saw it because CrossFit was like real hype back then. I saw a lot of people start showing up at Jiunta's CrossFit gym, and you just pimp slapped them with a barbell because you've been carrying this entire time. And I remember seeing these little rats when we go into fucking recorded episodes, and I'm like, is this homie for real? Like he's fucking infringing on your turf? And you're like, dude, I'm not worried about it. Ba-ba-boom! Like 100-kilo snatch. And I was just like, oh, right. That's why you're not worried about it, right? This is a guy like Mr. Steal Your Girl is not walking in with like a 40-kilo snatch. Like it's just, all right, jabroni. Like take a fucking walk. Try the chest club down the street, virgin. Get the fuck out of here. But dude, man, you remember that. You'll never admit it, but you at least remember it. How many kids from our school just started rocking up to your CrossFit box Once they realize that, oh man, the dumb kids that lift weights are doing really well in practice. It's like, and it's not the lifting weights. It's the caring about the lifting of the weights, right? It's the caring about progression and progress and all the shit we were just talking about. Don't be a douche and give a shit. And then like turn over big rocks, understand a little bit about a little bit. And that's something you're like what you do it with people that you like. Done.
There it is. Life advice.
Know what else to say? That's
RX Radio.
The best. And if you know what, if you're still alive from listening to our advice, then keep on keeping on. To those we've lost along the way, we appreciate you donating your body to the science that is this podcast.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so we'll put a bow on it there. Do appreciate you guys listening. Like I said, we're making a run now. You know what? I didn't check to see if the trick on last week's podcast boosted our ranking.
Oh.
So right, remember that? So
yeah,
guys, if I say the biggest thing, if you guys like the podcast, shout us out on Instagram. We don't do any of the Patreon crap. We don't want any of your money. We do have some courses coming up. I have a lot of PSL1 coaches that are in the mix now, which is pretty awesome. I know a lot of you guys listen to the podcast. If you're in the course currently, shouts out to you guys. If you guys are interested, the next semester is going to be up. End of November, barbell course is going to be up. So the powerlifting course, 6 weeks on squat, bench, and deadlift is going to be up at the beginning of November as well. Stay tuned for early November. We got a new course we're rolling out. Really excited about that. Dr. J is taking the reins on that one, so we're stoked about that. So guys, if you do want to get onto the mailing list, be the first to know. Keep listening to the podcast or head over to www.pre-script.com. Get in the mailing list, scroll to the bottom of the page, get your email in there. You guys will be the first to know with the new courses. As always, appreciate you guys listening. We'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, guys.